Welcome to our first premiere event at JCSU for our Crisis and Compassion documentary. And I want to tell you a little bit about our documentary, and we'll then screen the documentary and have a conversation about it. But first, let me introduce a few people. Dr. Davida Haywood is with us. She is our new Vice President for Student Affairs at JCSU. We're so grateful that you were able to make time for us today. Dr. Haywood has done some work in the past with Interfaith Youth Corps. So when she saw that we were connected with them, she wanted to find out more about that. So Dr. Haywood, thank you so much for being a part of our event today. And I also want to introduce my faculty panelists. Dr. LaSonya Townsend is Assistant Professor of Social Work and the Bachelor of Social Work Liaison for Johnson C. Smith University's School of Social Work and Metropolitan College of Professional Studies. She's a member of and the advisor for the Johnson C. Smith chapter of the North American Association of Christians in Social Work. She's a member of the National Council of Negro Women and the National Association of Black Social Workers. And Dr. Townsend and I joined the JCSU faculty at the same time about 7 years ago. And I was telling her how much I appreciated just she and I were new at the same time. It was a bunch of people at this event, and as an introvert, I was kind of terrified. And I was glad just to have somebody to talk with at that event that was also new, and so that was very helpful to me. And I've always appreciated Dr. Townsend because of that. Thank you, Dr. Townsend, for being a part of this today.
Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Mario Bahena Urióstegui is chair of the Languages and Literatures Department and associate professor of Spanish in JCSU's College of Arts and Letters. And he also serves currently as president of our faculty senate and as the faculty advisor for the Junior Journal, which is a publication dedicated to the best examples of JCSU student research. And Mario is one of the first people I met at JCSU because my first office was just across from his in the basement of the Newsome Humanities building. And I always came to appreciate and admire his care and advocacy for our students and for his fellow faculty colleagues, which I think is what led him to the faculty senate. And so Mario, thank you for being a part of our event today.
Thank you for having me.
And my student interns are Exodus Moon, who's here with us today, and also Iyanla Parsanlal. Exodus is a senior in communication arts, and so he's on his way towards graduation. We're so thankful for him. Iyanla is majoring in interdisciplinary studies. She hasn't been able to join us yet, but Exodus, we're so glad that you're here today. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And I want to introduce the Reverend LeDayne McLeese Polaski, Executive Director of the Mecklenburg Metropolitan Interfaith Network, known around the city as MeckMIN. And we were just talking before we got started that she's just been Executive Director there for a little over a year. So she came in right before the pandemic started and came by my office one day, and we talked about possible collaborations. Little did we know where that would end up. So LeDayne, thank you so much for being here with us today.
I'm excited to be here.
And I'll give her a chance to talk a little bit about MeckMIN in a little while. Also, I want to recognize Dr. Suzanne Watts Henderson, Dean of Belk Chapel and Chair of the Department of Philosophy and Religion and professor of religion at Queen's University. She is the founder and director of Bridge Builders Charlotte, and has been a tremendous partner and collaborator over the last few years. Suzanne, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Mobley. Were you wanting me to say a little word now, or what?
Yeah.
What we didn't
Yeah, it
quite
would be a
work through the
great time.
agenda.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I won't take much time, but boy, what a joy it is to be with you all. This morning, I'm going to have to duck out for another meeting soon, but I did want to touch base with you. I have seen the documentary that you're going to screen, and you are in for a treat. I can't tell you what a pleasure it has been to work with our JCSU team and our MeckMIN partner in this example of bridge building and the storytelling around bridge building in our community. Dr. Mobley has asked me to give a little bit of a preview of what lies ahead for Bridge Builders Charlotte. We have two initiatives, one shorter term and one longer term in mind that are the wheels are spinning. And the first has to do with the vaccine rollout and participation, and using campus teams and student ambassadors to reach communities that are either vaccine averse or have accessibility issues, to promote broader participation in the vaccination program. So we're very excited about that. This initiative comes, Davida, out of Chicago from our partners at IFYC, who have envisioned a national program along these lines and will be playing a leading role in training students. They're an amazing partner in this work, and really the originators of the whole initiative that we are calling Bridge Builders Charlotte. And then the longer term one is that we have funding to build a habitat house together across campuses and across faith traditions in a way that really lifts up religion and religious difference as something to engage in a meaningful way. So that is a little further out on the horizon, but we're really excited about future possibility of this campus network that's just beginning to take shape across all kinds of different campuses in our community. So thanks for the privilege of working with your team. Thanks for the great work, Dr. Mobley, that you and Iyanla have done on this exciting series. So, and thanks for welcoming me today.
Well, it's quite a pleasure. And you know, Bridge Builders was Suzanne's sort of brainchild. And she came and said, and it was Johnson C. Smith in Queens and Central Piedmont Community College and Wingate and Davidson and UNCC. Did I leave anybody out? I think that was everybody. And she said, we want to fund you to do projects where you connect your campus with with two faith communities at least, and then a local nonprofit, and do some kind of response to the pandemic. And people came up with really creative ideas, but I thought somebody needs to tell these stories. And I had no idea how to make a documentary, but I said, somebody needs to record what it is that is motivating these people to do what they're doing. And so we set out to do it, and she gave us permission to do that. And like I say, I had no idea how to do it, but we just jumped in and started. So this what I'm about to screen for you is our very first episode. And it's called MeckMIN Making a Shidduck. And you will find out why it's called that as we watch. That was episode 1. And in just a minute, I'm going to get some feedback from our panelists. But LeDayne, I want to start with you. How did instituting these calls change MeckMIN?
That's a great question. As you mentioned, I had just started in October of 2019 when the pandemic started. And I think that that it's the relationships that have been so key, that having a specific reason to meet and work together has been amazing and transformative. And honestly, groups that were maybe a little suspicious of interfaith work beforehand were willing to get on and to work together because like the need was so great and it was so clear that we needed to be working together. And so there are groups that I've gotten to know that absolutely I would never have been able to meet before. And I've told this story several times, so my apologies to those of you who've heard it before. I'm on a lot of different, interfaith mailing lists, and there's an interfaith group in another city that does some really excellent work. And I went to a webinar that they were hosting, and in that webinar, one of their faith leaders was lamenting the fact that though they had these webinars and things that were great, like he didn't see them doing anything together. And I was like, oh, so it's not a given that the faith community actually works together. So for me, it's just been, it's been hard. Obviously, a lot of really difficult things are happening, and it's, we certainly are not closing our eyes to that. In the midst of that, it's been really, really good to be able to meet with so regularly with so many people who are responding to that with wisdom and compassion, and to be able to help that undergird that in ways that are really supported happening, and particularly in connecting people to people and groups to groups so that the work is stronger.
Yeah, thank you. So we did, as in the process of making these episodes, now not just that one episode, but so far we've released 3 episodes and there's one more on the way. We've interviewed in the neighborhood of 42, 43 people, and most of those interviews, or many of those interviews, were done by our student interns. And X did such excellent work with the interviews that he did. And so I just want to give him a chance to talk about how did this experience of working on this this grant project, what was that like for you, X? How did that affect your sort of view of the world working on this grant project?
Hey everyone. So I'm Exodus, and so working on this project was very eye-opening for me because one, for a couple of reasons. One, documentary is something that I've always really wanted to do. So when I seen the opportunity of storytelling of this particular project, I was immediately interested. And honestly, so when we first started, even talking about interfaith, I didn't really know what that was at first. But as we, I read the book, we did our training, and then as we started going on these interviews, it just really opened up a whole nother world. One, into how people who aren't typically connected or probably wouldn't have been connected before this pandemic all came together. But secondly, how everybody's common goal was to serve. And I think that was just very enlightening and motivating for me, and how I go about my daily life. It was just very this whole experience has just been, I don't know, it's almost I can't even find the right word for it. Just enlightening, to say the least, to kind of sum it up.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And so now I'll invite Dr. Townsend and then Dr. Urióstegui to comment on, how they respond to this from their academic perspectives and from their points of view. So Dr. Townsend.
So there are a few takeaways, but one thing that stood out to me was the phrase, "We are stronger together." And so coming from a social work profession, we take a holistic approach when we are helping our consumers, meaning we look at the emotional, spiritual, physical aspects of what's going on with them. So when we broker resources to help them, feel whole again, to help them out of the situation that they're in, that's the biggest thing that we can do. However, if resources are depleted or lacking, that impacts our ability to do our job. So just knowing that this exists and knowing how everybody has come together to provide resources actually help us help our clients, and then eventually they help themselves. From a social profession, point of view, we are about compassion and showing empathy and getting our hands dirty. And so we're not about, people picking themselves up by their bootstraps. We're not about that. We believe in everything that video, that documentary just talked about when it comes to helping those in need. So I am really excited about this, and watching those videos. I had to go ahead and watch the other 3 as well that's out there, the other 2 that's out there, because this was so exciting and it means so much to me coming from a social work perspective, because that's what we do. This impacts us. This impacts how we can do things for the people that we help.
Thank you. Dr. Urióstegui?
Thank you for the invitation. One could think that once the COVID hit, that there wouldn't be, or different organizations wouldn't be able to help the people in need, because of the traditional way of helping them would not work, and certainly the need will not disappear because of the traditional means are not available. On the contrary, it would certainly increase. And it's interesting because, yes, even us professors had to reinvent ourselves, our classes, in these new circumstances. The faith communities in Charlotte were able to create their own way of doing good, as they call it, right? Doing good. I realized that they were using a lot of simple words, kind of try to portray complex ways of help the community. And I think the metaphor of the Shidduck kind of was really good. That actually made me look at it. Hold on. This is a very important thing that I need to understand what it is. And then, of course, I learned something about other faiths that is not mine, and learned many things about that faith, which was very fascinating. So it's kind of, it's part of the process of learning about the other, while at the same time helping the other in this new situation that we are all ourselves in. And certainly,
Yeah, thank you both. So I just want to, for the time that we have left, we have about 20 minutes left, and I just want to kind of throw open the floor for questions, comments, anybody who would like. Dr. Townsend.
Well, I was going to say, just listen to Maria too. One other thing is, before the pandemic, a lot of organizations worked in silos. So when they had resources, once those resources were depleted, you had to come back the next month and get those services. However, during the pandemic, more people needed those resources. So a lot of resources became scarce. And so this whole matchmaking thing as well has also improved the ability for people that need those resources to get those resources during this time. And so I just wanted to make that comment.
That's an important observation.
And I think, one of the things that I think has been really helpful about these calls is that sometimes the resources aren't in fact scarce, but we just don't know where to find them. So for the first 3 months of these calls, Tina Postel from Loaves and Fishes was on almost every week. And every single week, some small grassroots group would say, we spent everything in our checking account to buy people food. And Tina would say, we've got food. We've got food. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. Call me. I'll teach you how to make a referral. You don't need to be wasting all your money on food when Loaves and Fishes has food. So part of what's been really good to watch is that sometimes the resources are actually there, but if you don't know how to if you don't know how to access them, it's as good as them not being there. So a lot of what's happened on the calls is people figuring out, oh, I can get this from this group, I can get this from that group. We can focus on this because other people are doing these other things.
Can
Yeah.
I just go ahead and make a quick comment?
Yes, please.
Dr. Mobley, I first wanted to congratulate you and your team for this excellent work
Oh, thank
and
you.
for showcasing it, because on a personal level, this means so many different things. I was pleasantly surprised. Well, I was delighted to see someone from the Gurdwara of Charlotte, because that's one of the faiths that I live with. And I think, like Mario said, the metaphor of the Shidduck, if I said that right, is so beautifully represented here, truly creating communities and bringing people together and doing things so we're not reaching out to students and people of the community in isolation, but truly doing something together. And I can't wait to see where you go with this. So congratulations on an excellent project.
Thank you so much, Dr. Coley.
Dr. Mobley. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go
Oh,
ahead,
do you want to go?
Dr. Haywood.
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
I was just going to echo the same sentiment. First off, I went off a video because I felt like I wanted to be at the movies, like when the lights go down, so I can see it and really enjoy it. But I was transported back to graduate school and my time at Ohio State University, where in the city of Columbus, there was some energy around interfaith connectedness. And as I mentioned to Dr. Mobley, during my time there when I oversaw the Multicultural Center, we did have an interfaith youth council for our students. And then there was very much like I saw in this documentary, the coming together of different faiths and spiritual journeys and walks to try to empower and encourage our students. So this is like, it's well done, and it's much needed, the dialogue, particularly during this moment in our lives. And so Dr. Mobley and I will be meeting next week because from where I sit at the institution, spiritual life and spiritual identity, I think, is one of many ways that students can transform themselves while they are in college. So I hope there will be more to come and opportunities when we are able to gather again safely to have some of you here on campus. But just well done. Now I'm going to transfer from Columbus and come back to Charlotte. But you took me back. And you took me back. I'm looking over at my bookcase because I have my copy of Acts of Faith, a text that was assigned during my graduate study. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I just wanted to chime in. So one thing, I don't want to say a positive thing that's come out of COVID, but in a way it has been, is as we've seen these nonprofits coming together and these resources coming together, and it has also made people, especially in my surrounding community, I'm in Concord, and so it's a little bit smaller, but it's made people more aware of people who are in need and not having access and what they can do to help. And so I'm Catholic, and one of the things for the students who are about to make their confirmation is they have to do a project. And this year they focused on doing acts of service instead of these projects. And most of the students that I saw going out were, hey, we have an opportunity to go, we call it stuff backpacks, do backpacks for, and this is a program that they actually would drop the backpacks off at high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools, and the kids just pick up the backpack and go home. And what's in that backpack is food for them, because they are, they're food insecure, and this is how we get them food. And I saw a lot of communities coming together, and the conversations that were being had within not only the faith, but how do we maintain these connections to continue to care for our community? The revamp of the idea was that I'm caring for my community, not just for my church, but I'm extending out and going into my community. And these people are a part of my community and a part of my faith and a part of my church, even if we are all different religions. And it was very, it was very heartwarming in a way. But I also saw that they were aware of, for as many backpacks as we used to be filling, we needed to triple that or quadruple that, because a lot of them were not reaching out or saying, hey, I'm having this issue, and they became painfully aware. And I saw a lot of the local area step up and really kind of take hold. And it was, it's like, as I said, you don't want to say a good thing that came out of COVID, but it was a positive thing that came out of COVID. And these high schoolers are now a little bit more aware, and you see them dedicating their time, and some of them money and effort in terms of, I'm going to go make sure we have extra fruit to be able to put in these backpacks and stuff for these children. And I thought that was really awesome. So we see it happening on multiple levels, but the conversations in terms of their beliefs and opening up that conversation and almost eliminating that break in between religions was really awesome, as well as they were starting to connect on another level.
Thank you, Dr. D. Yeah. And just to follow up on that, one of the original motivations that I had for wanting to do this documentary was, number one, whenever I see stuff in the media about people doing benevolent acts, right? You usually get a good amount of information about what they're doing, but you don't always get the information about why. You don't hear them talking about what it is that motivates them to do what they do. And so I wanted to give people a chance to talk about their motivating values, their beliefs, their spirituality, what led them to their ethical perspective that motivated them to do what they do. So I wanted to give people a chance to talk about that. And also, especially over the last several years, there's been a huge discourse, and it's real, the discourse of conflict in our culture, right? Culture war, right? But I also see a different narrative taking place, and that is at the local level, at the community level, there are people overcoming their differences and overcoming the things that separate them to work together for the common good. And I wanted to tell part of that story too.
Yeah.
So those are the reasons really that I got into it. And then I started learning so much, and it's really been wonderful. Okay, so I don't want to dominate. I want to let you all talk. So anybody else with a comment or a question?
Yeah.
So and I'll throw this out to anybody who would like to address it. Religion is often seen as a source of conflict, right? And of course, again, that's real. It has been a source of conflict. But what I try to do is to show that in a lot of different religious communities, people share sort of some very consistent ethical values, right? And I didn't, basically the questions, I asked the same set of questions to everybody and just let them talk. So I didn't try to get people to say certain things. I just asked and LeDayne and X can testify to this. We came up with a sort of a general set of questions, and we said, we're going to use these questions, and if you need to do a follow-up, do a follow-up, but these are the basic questions. Isn't that what we did? Yeah. And so we just asked the questions and let people talk. And I was amazed at how often people's responses lined up. So, so part of my question is it that religions are inherently conflictual with one another, or is it that through, trying to achieve, power, trying to achieve status, people use their religions in a way that they use that community as a power base for their own purposes? That's one of the questions that keeps occurring to me. So let me throw that out to folks.
Can I
say something?
Go ahead. Well, go ahead, X, and then we'll go to Mario.
I'm not sure if it's going to answer your question or not, but it was just something like kind of a conclusion that I had came to, because I had kind of thought about that as well. And I kind of wanted to like highlight like a point also, like when we had, so for those of you who may not know, like I had went with Dr. Mobley and Dr. Carey to Israel for a study abroad trip. And that's really when I had started thinking about it, like, because, you know, I grew up, you know, believing what I, you know, grew up believing. And when I went to Israel, we studied different religions and things of that nature. And one of the biggest things that I had, even like just with like learning, even for that short amount of time of like the Jewish faith and of the Muslim faith and stuff like that, it's like there has always been common values within different religions. And also even with participating into this project, I think another takeaway that I had is just sometimes having those conversations with people. I talked with people who I probably, without this project, would have never engaged in a conversation with before. And just with those conversations, like outside of the interviews, just having like regular conversations with people and getting an understanding of their values and their beliefs, you know, it just kind of, I don't want to say it makes things go better, but like I don't know, it's just different. Like sometimes I think we get so composed and like what we have going on, like our everyday things, so like we really don't see, like we see people, but we don't really see people, right? So it's like, even like with this, like people had invited me, like extended the invitation for me to like go to their services, which even in honesty, I don't even know if that invitation would have been extended outside of this project, but that's still an invitation that was extended out to me. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it is nothing. It doesn't, it takes nothing from you to like have a conversation with someone or get a better understanding of, you know, what they believe or why they believe it, or I don't know. I feel like I'm just rambling now, but yeah, that's basically what I was trying to say.
Mario?
Thanks. Actually, one of the things that I learned from the seminary, especially since it was led by Irish descendant priest and Italian descendant priest, is that the Irish had a hard time when they came to the United States back in the 19th century. And of course, we got this founding story, you know, Catholicism in the United States was founded by the Irish, and they came with their priests and all that, you know. But also they talk about how they were hated back in the 1980s. I mean, 1880s, in the mid 1800s. And to tell you the truth, yes, I kind of saw a little bit of that Protestant anti-Catholicism in the 90s, up until the 90s. And then somehow I forgot about it and I stopped seeing it. And then after your talk that you gave about 2 weeks ago, it came back. I was like, hold on. I remember this. Somehow, what happened? And I told my wife, something happened in the American religious traditions that the anti-Catholicism disappeared in the last 20 years. Well, this is not the proof, it's not part of the theology itself, was not taught. I think 9/11 happened and the hate went to a different religion. But I don't want to say yes. I would love to have Aman Nadiri here so he could share his story about it.
And he's going to be one of our panelists for our next episode, which is a conversation with Hannah Hassan. And the title of the episode is "The Muslim in the Room." So,
you already watched it.
And so Professor Nathiri will be a panelist for our next episode, which was thank you, Mario, for that great opportunity to segue and promote the next episode, which will be about a month from now. So we just have a few minutes left. Wow, it just went by so fast. Cindy, do you want to say something quick?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment that I was reminded of when Exodus was talking. The first trip we took to Israel with JCSU students, we had one student who was Muslim, and I will never forget what she said to me as we were getting ready to fly back. And she went through a lot because she just did, which is another story. But she said to me, the one thing I learned from this trip is that there's so many more similarities than differences between these religions. And the project like this one shows us, gives us an understanding of these different religions in a way that challenges the dominant narratives about, you know, Jews don't get along with with Muslims, and, you know, all and the Catholics are, you know, more hated than the Protestants. It gives us a different lens to look at what's going on in our society. And it's very, very important work. So I congratulate you all for this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead, Dr.
Just one
Townsend.
quick thing too. I grew up, my father's side is Baptist, my mom's side is Methodist. And I don't think it's more of control. I think it's who's the best. And so I think a lot of religions focus on that versus the similarities. So I think if we can get past that, you know, we do this better, we do this, you know, because you can sing better doesn't mean that you're going to make it to heaven. But I'm just saying in general that everybody wants to be the best. But if we can focus on the similarities and what makes us who we are, and I think those lines would be more blurred versus just black and white.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend.
At MeckMIN, we try to do both. Like we talk about, like, yes, our commonalities are huge, and there are differences, right? The differences are real. I think what a project like this does, though, is it gives you a platform of relationships from which to discuss those differences, right? So that we're coming together as people who know we have a lot in common, who have worked together. And so when we sit down to talk about, okay, where are we different, and what are the really different beliefs and different practices, it's just in a whole different context, because it's coming in this context of, I mean, for us right now, it's like, okay, we've been working together for a whole year and meeting together every week for an entire year. That really puts things in a completely different context of, like, all right, now we can sit down and talk about the ways in which we're different and the places where we have real disagreements. But it's going to be a different conversation because we've been working together for a year. So I think it's both. It's like, yes, we see tons of commonality, which is great. And we have a platform to talk about our differences and disagreements that I feel like it will go differently because we've worked together for a year.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So we're like a minute away, and I want to be faithful to the time commitment that I asked you to make. So I did put in the chat some website information. So I put the website for Bridge Builders Charlotte, which is our funding agency for the grant through the Gambrell Foundation and Interfaith Youth Corps. Bridge Builder Charlotte was able to gather this funding, which they then passed on to us for our documentary. And so we're so grateful to them for that. And then also the MeckMIN website I put in the chat, and you can find all the episodes of the documentary linked both on the Bridge Builders site and on MeckMIN's site. And whenever we do community screenings for these things, we do it through the MeckMIN website. So LeDayne's been very generous that way, and thank you for helping us with that. And then I put the YouTube channel where you can find the videos as well. And I just want to mention that if you go in the YouTube channel and you look in the comments, you'll see the link for the discussion guide for each video. I put together a discussion guide for each video. Next month, you'll be seeing or in 2 weeks rather, you'll be seeing the publicity for our next screening, which I've already talked about with Hannah Hassan. And then there's the next one after that is called Doing the Work, and it features a great interview that X did, which kind of frames the entire episode with Jermaine Nakia Lee. And then I'm working on right now, I'm editing an episode about the Chapel of Christ the King Episcopal Church, and they're using their church property to create an edible landscape to address food insecurity in their community. And so that will be coming up soon as well. So I just want to let you all know what's coming with these screenings, and keep your eye out for the publicity. And thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you, Dr. Townsend, Dr. Urióstegui. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time, and have a great day.